Welcome back, everyone, to Meditations by Gregory T. Obert, bringing you the best new guided meditations and mental health discussions every week. I'm your host, clinical psychologist Dr. Gregory T. Obert. Thank you so much for joining me today, and especially on this day because it is the end of year wrap-up. That's right. I don't know if you can believe it. I'm having a hard time believing it, but apparently 2025 is just about over. Now, typically, for those that are new here, what I like to do is take a little bit of a break when it is the end of the year, and I've oftentimes taken a couple months off. So this year I've done something a little bit different, and there's a reason for that, and we're going to talk all about it as I get into this year's message. But of course, I have not taken a few months off. I have continued to release new, exciting projects and interviews that I never thought I'd do. And, well, instead of just kind of talking around it, let's talk all about how the year has gone and what I think will be happening in 2026. So I hope you enjoy this sort of recap. And if you're uninterested in the kind of behind the scenes stuff, I plan to be back in a couple of weeks. And as I check the calendar, I believe I had planned on January 12th. So I will be back on January 12th with a brand new either meditation or interview. I think probably for the first episode of the year, I will do a meditation, and then I do have a couple more interviews scheduled. So hopefully those will go through and you'll have some interesting people to hear from. But for those who are interested in listening, let's dive into it. So this year has been one heck of an up and down and all around for me. So when it comes to what I envisioned 2025 to be, it is definitely not at all how it ended up turning out. For those of you that have been here for a minute, you've probably remembered that in 2024 I launched a locals community trying to get some extra income for what I do here on this podcast, and it just didn't really go anywhere. Nobody really signed up for it, and I get it. I mean, I know money's tight, and maybe people just didn't see value in it, and if that's the case, then I've got to do a better job of showing what the value is. So I really started the year off thinking that I would just continue to try and add more value to the locals and maybe bring some people in for some paid subscriptions. But as far as the show was concerned, I planned to just continue things as they were. That being releasing a guided meditation every other week. And I believe earlier in the year as well, I was still kind of paywalling some of those extra meditations. So that meant that those who just wanted to listen to the podcast feed, they would get one meditation free per month. And then any remaining meditations they'd have to go over to locals and listen to. They'd have just kind of a free sample on the podcast feed. But again, it didn't really draw anybody in. It didn't really negatively affect numbers, which again, I'm grateful to all of you for sticking with me despite me kind of playing around with that. And I decided to maybe work with a marketing company, and they were the ones that convinced me, don't put any episodes behind paywalls because you want people to show up and listen and support you. So that's why if anyone here was kind of wondering why that stopped, that's why that ended up stopping. Now, I ultimately had a very negative experience with that marketing company, but it was at least good advice on their part to give them, or to give me that tidbit. So I decided to just kind of keep things going as usual, and my mantra with this show has always just been, it will be what it will be. I will put out quality content and people will come or they won't come. And I know that there was a time in the past where I had a very large audience, and that was the time when I ended up just kind of losing faith in the podcast. I grew tired of it, and I just kind of disappeared for almost a year. And while I still have some wonderful listeners like yourselves who continue to support me, I'm working on earning back the trust of those who left. And I just thought, well, if I just keep showing up, I'll still get numbers, and I'll just kind of keep doing my thing. Well, all that kind of changed a little bit for me earlier in the year. For those that don't know, I had my son. Well, I didn't have my son. My wife had my son. And so that means that there are two little kiddos running around. And, of course, that means, I want to make sure I'm providing for my whole family. So what could I do to, drive more traffic to what I do? And I decided that, one of the things that I've been kind of putting off was looking into opening my own private practice. And this is something that just, I guess for the longest time I thought to myself, this is not something that I am able to do easily, that it requires a lot of back-end work. It requires talking with lawyers, which can be pricey. It just requires a lot. And after a few life events kind of changed my perception on that, in particular, I just want to, like I said, I want to make more money. I want to be able to provide for my family. And for those that don't know, when it comes to mental health providers, oftentimes they will be contractors at other practices. And those practices will, of course, take a cut of whatever the practitioner makes. Totally understandable. Yet, at a certain point, I start to think to myself, well, why am I giving away X percentage of my paycheck when I could just do it myself and do it the way that I want to do it? So that's when I opened up my practice in July, officially in July. I think I teased it for earlier than that, but I had to wait till my my liability insurance, kicked or rolled over. So it was July that things opened up, and I just kept thinking to myself, how can I get more people in? I really want to drive people to my practice, and maybe one way to do that is to offer more value on the podcast. So I did that. And for the first time in the history of the show, which started, believe it or not, in 2017, at the end of 2017, I released weekly episodes. Now, I wasn't quite sure how long that was going to be for, but I did want to at least try something different. So that was my Therapy 101 series, and if you want to listen to that series in full, I did make a page on my practice website. You can just go there. The link will be in the description, and you can look for the Therapy 101 page under my Media tab at the top. And I thought, okay, well, for people that may not know as much about therapy, why not talk a little bit about what to expect and various topics that I am knowledgeable about? Now, I haven't received any negative feedback on it. In fact, people that I know in my real life told me that it was really great. There was a lot of value there, and they thought it was a wonderful idea. So hopefully, if you listened to some of that or all of that series, you got some benefits from it. And of course, those being interlaced with the regular meditations. That release schedule has never changed. But then I started to get later in the year, and I was running out of ideas to talk about for a Therapy 101 series. And so I just wasn't quite sure what to do at all. Because how am I going to keep these conversations going if, they're all reliant upon me? And for those that might have missed it, I was a guest on Smashing the Plateau, which is a business podcast. And David, the host, who was very generous and not only having me on, but having a great discussion with me, he told me a little bit about the usefulness, the benefits of having guests on. And in particular, guests are going to, bring their audience with them. Now, they may not stay, they may just listen to the interview and leave, but you're going to have a lot more eyes on a typical episode than you would otherwise. And I thought about that long and hard, and there was just such resistance from me to do the interview thing. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just I think I couldn't do it, or you really need to have a lot of practice with that, and I just didn't really want to have an interview show because that's a whole other dynamic, having guests on and booking them and all that comes with that. But I thought to myself, why not give it a try? Let's just kind of see what happens. And what was fascinating about it is the synchronicity of it all, that I was able to book in very quick succession to the point where I was like, oh my God, I don't really have room on my schedule for any more this year. But I was able to book 3 really quality people very quickly, and those are Michael McAdams and Kat Greenleaf and Nikolai Blinnow. And if you haven't listened to any of those interviews, I think they're great. I really, really enjoyed speaking with all of them, and I'm just grateful that they were willing to come on the show. I mean, they were willing to record at the time that I have available, which at this point is kind of limited, though I hope that will increase a bit more as I move into the new year. But it was just so fun to have those conversations and bounce ideas off each other, and I was just thrilled to see that happen and to have those things come to fruition. And in fact, I already have, as I mentioned, a few more booked for January, and I'm looking forward to meeting with those people, and hopefully some more will come out of the woodworks and want to be guests on my show. In fact, if you're listening to this and you think you would like to be a guest on my show, reach out. You can reach out to me through my personal website, which is gregorytobert.com, and there's a contact form there. Just send me a message. I would love to hear from you. But I just was pleased with my own growth, over this past year, because, like I said, there was just this innate kind of fear of being the guy to do the interviews. Can I shape the interview in a way that is interesting and fun and lighthearted and just enjoyable for people to listen to, on top of being informative? I don't want to have someone on just to talk about nothing. I want to have people on to actually bring value to my audience and to their audience, of course. So that was a big moment for me to make that change, and I'm grateful that I did. I'm really grateful that I did. Not to mention, that wasn't the only big thing that I started to incorporate into my life over 2025. For those that are unaware, if you're not listening to this on YouTube, or if you're not subscribed on YouTube, I do have a new series, newish series, on YouTube, which is my Dark Psychology series. And in fact, one of those off weeks where I was kind of struggling to come up with topics to talk about, I published the audio of one of those streams on the podcast feed, just to give you guys an idea of what it's like. And the logic there was just, it is very popular to talk about dark topics. It is very popular to talk about such things, whether you're watching Snapped or what was the big show a few years back, Serial, I think. Just people like that dark side of the human psyche. So why not talk about some of that as a psychologist and use my knowledge against what information is out there and kind of throw my 2 cents into it. And it turns out that, I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Now, maybe some people are hoping for deeper dives into certain topics. I don't know. I haven't really gotten a lot of feedback on it, but seems to me that people are somewhat enjoying it. I'm getting comments here and there, and they're relevant to the topics that I'm talking about. So, if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Again, on my practice page, there is a tab at the top, media, for video series, and you can check that out. I believe there is just a direct link in the show notes. In fact, I know that that's the case. So if you want to watch on YouTube or Rumble, you can absolutely do that. Check it out. I also stream that to X Twitter, so feel free to watch there as well. But once again, I found myself being very proud that I pushed through some limitations that I was just putting on myself. And I suspect that all of you have those limitations that you put on yourselves, because that's why you're listening to a meditations podcast, to release, to relax, to try to work through whatever inner stuff you're trying to work through. And the same is true for me. And one of those things that I kept telling myself is that I just don't have the expertise, which is what I was saying about the interviews as well. And I just don't have the time. There's no way I can add something else onto my plate. But as I've done my own inner work, I've been able to smash through both of those things. As far as the expertise goes, you might be laughing yourself when you hear me say that, yet it was true. I mean, well, yes, I am a clinical psychologist, and yes, I spent, many years in higher education. In fact, all told, after undergrad, I spent a total of 9 years in graduate school because I took the long road, first through DePaul and then through Rosalind Franklin University. But if you do count undergrad, of course, then that is another 4, which puts me at 13 years. So I've spent 13 years in higher education, and I have a doctorate and 2 masters to show for it, and I guess I just don't have expertise? What? But, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I've been telling myself for a long time. For those that maybe are in grad school or have gone through grad school, you know that it's pretty rare to feel very supported throughout that process. And in fact, as you go through higher education, that grad school experience, particularly at the doctoral level, there are so many egos and insecurities and perfectionist tendencies that come out. It is very difficult to work in an environment like that and not take some of that home, thinking that you're not good enough, thinking that you just don't know enough, thinking that you'll never know enough. And why bother to go out there and take your expertise and use it in a public way, because, man, there's going to be someone else out there that already knows more than I do, so who cares? Like, why even try? That imposter syndrome really shows up hard for those that are unfamiliar with imposter syndrome. I mean, that's that notion that it's like you have titles and degrees, but someone's going to find out that you don't actually know what you're doing, that you don't actually know anything. So you're just kind of trying to hide so that nobody will find you out. But of course, none of that is true. None of that is true. Yet it's something that I've been telling myself for a very, very long time. And so part of my own healing journey has been to bust out of that self-made cage that I have imposed on myself, to show that no, I can try new things. I can maybe actually be quite good at them. Maybe I crash and burn, and that's fine, that's good data, but maybe I actually find that I'm quite good at it and I enjoy it. And that has been the case with the interviews as well as the dark psychology. But also, it helped me work through that second limitation that I had put on myself, which was the time.